you, Leora.
Let's see.
Yep.
It's recording.
Okay, perfect.
Good, perfect, wonderful, thank you.
All right. All right, so David is going to talk about some due process updates.
So I think everybody here might have been in my presentation last year. So the first 6 slides I'm going to go through are kind of review, and then I'm going to review. There's been like 4 cases since I talked to you folks last year. So next slide, Leora. So this is a review slide. Dispute resolution in Maine. There's early dispute resolution, which has been really busy lately, but it's good to, I'm allowed to say, and it's good to say, that mediations, state complaints, due process hearings, expedited due process hearings, those other areas that parents can access through procedural safeguards, there hasn't been a large uptick in those with COVID. A lot of people ask me, aren't you getting a lot of complaints? And we do talk to a lot of parents, we talk to a lot of districts, and I think the team's done a really good job at providing a lot of TA to the districts, and we share that TA with parents, and parents seem to be able to work things out with districts around things that are going on for their children. You can go to the next slide, Leora. And the cases I'm going to talk about today, if you remember, I talked about how the court districts are split up into 10 different districts. The 4 cases I found in the last year, 2 of them are actually from our district, District 1, and then there's also 2 cases from District 5, which is Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Next slide, Leora. I just want to remind folks when we're talking about these appealed cases and things that go through the district courts, that they're really referring to IDEA, the language in IDEA, when you read through some of the case information I gave you. I provided, hopefully you've gotten the handout. This time we aren't going to read them and try to come up with the 3 big things out of them. I'm just going to talk about all the cases in general. But, you know, the IDEA language talks about that transition plan, including appropriate measurable post-secondary goals, having the assessments related to training, education, employment, and independent living skills, as well as the services that are in the IEP. Next slide. Thank you. So it's a set of activities based on their the students' needs, including post-secondary, moving from school to post-school activities, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, continuing and adult education services, independent living, or community participation. Next slide. Individual needs, taking into account their strengths, preferences, and interests, including instruction, related service, community experience, and the development of employment and other post-school adult living objectives. And when appropriate, the acquisition of daily living skills and functional vocational evaluation. So that's everything that's in that section. Is it section 10 now or section 9 of the IEP? It's 9, I believe. Next slide, please. The litigation we're talking about, there can be procedural violations, but really what it comes down to is whether or not the provision of FAPE to the child isn't to the level it should be in light of their unique circumstances. We always talk about that. Litigation's costly. It takes time. Sometimes there's compensatory education, and there can be tuition reimbursement. So next slide, please. So the first case I'm going to talk about was in the First Circuit Court of Appeals. And just so you know, oh, there go the lights again. All of these cases that I'm talking to you about today except for one, which is the next one, actually were in favor of the districts. So these districts were doing the right things, well documented in their IEPs and their transition plans. This CD versus Natick Public School District upheld the appropriateness of 3 successive proposed IEPs for a student with intellectual disability, including transition assessment and services in the 3rd IEP. Based on district differential approach, it rejected ambitious goals, challenging objectives as second. It was a separate Andrew F. standard tuition reimbursement case. So in the case, there was a focus by the parents on the transition plan, and what the hearing officer, or in this case, the district court judge, ruled there's no requirement for transition assessments to take a particular form. So in this case, there were interviews that were done, structured interviews, and some other things that were done with the child. And it was appropriate in this case because it met those requirements for a transition assessment. So there's nothing that's prescribed about what a transition assessment has to look like. There was an emphasis in the plan that they had reviewed psychological assessments and educational assessments, and those can inform transition planning too. So that's important to keep in mind. And then another big piece that was important here was that parent input and documentation was important. So the written notice indicated the parent input on the transition plan and the discussion around the goals and the services. So that was an important case that I brought up. That was recent in 2019. The next slide, please. This was actually a Maine case, and I apologize. The handout I sent to you doesn't have any specific information about this case. It was actually a complaint investigation that was done. Disability Rights Maine had filed with 2 individual parents. So there were 2 individual complaint investigations that went on, and then there was a systemic complaint investigation. And what they found in the district, or what the complaint investigator found in this district, was the district was graduating children who had multiple disabilities before the age of 20 that met graduation credit requirements. So after the 5th year, they were granting 5th years based on a request at an IEP meeting. They were graduating children who had met credit requirements because this particular district, their graduation requirements were based on the credits, not a proficiency-based diploma, that type of thing. They were cutting folks off and not providing a 6th year, regardless of age. They weren't allowing that. What the complaint investigator ruled was that was a change of placement outside of the IEP team. And there was a letter to Richards from OSERS. It's an older letter because it's now OSEP, but it's the same organization, Office of Special Education. Used to be Rehabilitation Services. Now it's Special Education Programs. But in that complaint investigation, I'll quote the complaint investigator: "The decision of whether a student with an IEP should graduate is exclusively within the jurisdiction of the student's IEP team. The proper function of the IEP team would be to conduct a review of the child's IEP at the appropriate time before they receive a diploma to assure that graduation requirements will be met, and that the goals and the objectives in the IEP are completed." So that was that OSER's letter that was referenced in the investigation. And there was also a case from Black River Falls from 2004. And in that case, the district's decision to graduate a student with a disability must be made by an IEP team. The IEP team could determine that a student would earn a diploma if they met the goals in the IEP. Particularly important if the focus of the student's program is functional life skills, Transition goals are especially important in this analysis. Ideally, the IEP team should begin having these conversations during a student's 9th or 10th grade year. So there were 3 cases. These cases will eventually be up on our website, redacted. And if you want to read them, I may follow up with if you're interested, with some of the information I was just talking about. It's not in the slide. When we shared the slide deck, I don't know if you got our notes, but they're in my notes for the slide deck, that letter and the case, the Black Rivers case. So if you're interested, there's quite a few years of corrective action on the systemic plan the district's going to be doing with us on a yearly basis. And the 2 individual children, well, actually they're young adults at this point. The 2 young adults, that they had to go back to the IEP team and make a decision about the 6th year. Looking at the IEP, there was never that discussion. So are there any questions about this one? This one's kind of new. Anybody have any questions about this one? No? Okay. Next slide. So the last 2 cases had to do with the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals in Texas. In the first case, the Renee v. Houston Independent School District, it upheld the appropriateness of IEP for a high school student with autism, intellectual disability, and attention deficit disorder, including the transition plan, school refusal bullying, and rejected predetermination claim regarding ABA. So again, this was in favor of the district. There was a bunch of other things in this case besides the transition plan, but the important things in the transition plan, which the judge agreed with, were that even though the child's primary of interest was that of a police officer, which was probably not realistic for this child, that the transition plan was designed to assist the child in developing the skills needed to successfully transition to post-secondary life. So even though that was his goal, or his employment goal and his education goal, they were still teaching the child the skills necessary that he would use as he moved on into adulthood. And again, this was another case where the district had documented attempts to collaborate and the successful collaboration with parents on the transition plan development. They had done a good job at that. And the primary focus was on employment interest and the skills necessary for general post-secondary life throughout the transition plan. So that upheld that transition plan. In the second court in the West, the second decision in the West District Court of Texas, this case upheld FAPE implementation as well as procedural and substantive FAPE of an IEP of a high school student with OHI, ADD, and SLD dyslexia. And it included a focus on the transition assessment. And this was a case where every year they had done structured interviews with the parents, with the child, with some of the providers that informed the transition planning. And again, this case ruled that it's not necessary to have a particular prescribed transition assessment, that structured interviews that get to all the points in the interest of the child and the interest of the parents work well for informing a transition plan. And the parent had challenged the transition goals, and they were measurable, which is important. I mean, if you go to any of Roberta's team's training around B13, those need to be measurable and something you can see as a child moves on to adulthood. So, any questions about any of those cases? It's a little harder doing this by Zoom without having all the information in front of us, and I apologize, but I think you're up next, Leora, aren't you?
I am. So I am just going to talk about what has been going on in transition planning since we saw you last. We are part of NTACT, the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, and they have a capacity building institute yearly. And this year it was virtual, which was very interesting. It started in May, and we had our final report out in August. And this was the slide that we shared for the state report out about what our goals are moving forward. We really want to focus on interagency collaboration, looking at those silos and trying to make sure that we can help kids with disabilities get the services that they need from providers who are available for them. So we have at the table with us Maine Parent Federation, the Department of Corrections, Voc Rehab, CTE, DHHS, and the Maine Center for the Deaf, and I should actually say hard of hearing, my mistake. But we work together as a group, as a cross-agency collaborative, to really look at some goals that we want to focus on for the next year. One of the things we really want to focus on is CTE, identifying and communicating best practices for CTE participation within the IEP process, how to lower those barriers for children with disabilities when it comes to CTE, and have better communication between school districts and CTE programming so that our children can benefit from that much more than they're able to right now. So Danielle Despins at the Maine Department of Education has been our contact with CTE, and she's been just awesome to work with and very involved and very helpful in getting us connected with some CTE training that I'll go over in just a few minutes. So last year, one of our goals was to establish the cross-agency collaborative, and we did that. We want to continue with that and to increase those opportunities about the professional development at the state and local level. So we were able to meet once, and we had two groups. We had a group of youth and we had a group of parents. And we split up, and Roberta and Libby Stone Sterling spoke with the parents, and Dylan from Maine Parent Federation and I and some other folks spoke with the youth, and it was really a fantastic couple of hours. And we'd really like to be able to do that again, and we have some in the works, and then COVID. So we've talked about doing that virtually. We're not exactly sure how that would work out, but it is definitely on our radar. It's something that we want to continue and expand on. And the other thing I just touched on a little bit is to explore a pathway to bridge the current gap between CTE and high school opportunities for student disabilities and Maine Community College post-secondary opportunities in Maine. How do we bridge that gap so that our students with disabilities have more access and more success in CTE programs? So those are things that we're going to be working on. So for COVID office hours, we hit the ground running the week after school transitioned into remote learning, the social services team, and we began having office hours daily. And on Thursdays, it was Transition Thursday, so we would focus more on transition planning. And when I looked back through our PowerPoints, and these were the things that we really focused on consistently. Helping educators be able to help youth identify their needs and develop strategies to meet those needs in this new learning environment that they had found themselves in, to help improve decision-making, goal setting, and goal attainment, to enhance communication and relationship skills. Those are things that I found a lot of resources about assessment and family involvement and things like that that I shared with the field to help facilitate these types of activities in a remote way for their transition age students. We also talked about developing the ability to celebrate success and learn from reflecting on experiences. Using those teachable moments was big because now the kids were in the home environment with different supports, and what was that going to look like, and how were we going to transition those goals? And to help the youth identify information they wanted to share with their educational team. So, to keep those assessments moving remotely and how that was going to work and some different strategies. And NTACT has some great toolkits for that as a starting point that we were able to put out to the field that were very helpful to folks. We really advocated on using teachable moments whenever possible because, again, the learning environment changed so much. So being able to use real life situations to make choices. Definitely the guidance was to think about the level of risk though, right? We needed to make sure that our students and their families are safe. But learning with their mistakes and living with the consequences. And the example that we used fairly frequently was cooking a family meal. Children had more opportunity to do that, which can turn into a very helpful situation, or it could turn into, Domino's delivery, depending on that situation. But that's sort of the consequence that we learn from. So we got some very nice feedback from the field on that as well. This is an NTACT resource, and I actually included it as a handout with the PDF that we shared yesterday, so you should have that. One of the things that we're really incorporating into our B13 training is to start as early as possible. That the earlier we start transition planning with our children with disabilities, the more successful they are in the long run, and that's what we all want. That's why we're all doing this work. So I like this resource because it really talks to, even in elementary and middle school, it's awareness. I use the example, when you meet a child who you don't know, like your third question after how old are you and what grade are you in is what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's really getting into that awareness, what are jobs, what is a career, why do I need to do this kind of thing? And kids start that very early in life, so we can, start that process with them. And then it goes through the exploration, preparation, and employment. And it really gives some great examples of how to look at those situations on that continuum as the child ages into post-secondary life. Another resource that we shared during our office hours were the soft skills. We realized Colette uses her daughter as an example. She's 17. When I first brought this to the team, she was like, wow, I don't know if she knows how to check the tire pressure, or does she know how to write a letter? So these were things that could translate into home activities, with support and guidance of the family. But they're things that we may take for granted that, everybody just knows, and very possible, and in fact, quite likely that they don't. So having an opportunity to really look at those soft skills and, what does that mean, for our children with disabilities. So we are collaborating with Maine Parent Federation on a self-advocacy group. We have met twice now, and actually PennQuist is involved with that as well. And we are talking with youth about self-determination skills and personal and family values. What does that mean for them and the choices that we make? We've had 2 meetings now, and it has been so fun. It's just been great. It's been really fun. And the kids have been very involved and engaged in the conversations, and they are virtual. We are doing them via Zoom. And we've had a good time with it. And we have 3 more sessions. And then I think we're going to transition into, I can't even remember right now. I just but we're going to transition into a different curriculum in January to continue the group meeting monthly and to work on some of those skills that children need to be successful as they transition into adulthood. So next Friday at this time, we will be presenting to Maine CTE sites. It's their annual workshop day where they all take the day off and come together to learn and be updated and so on. So we were asked to do 2 presentations specific to accommodations. How can you incorporate accommodations, IEP accommodations into the vocational environment. And I'm really, really excited about it because I think it will really help teachers, CTE teachers understand, sort of what that means for our children with disabilities and how things that may seem inaccessible might be more accessible than they realize that they are. And I've been doing some research preparing, and I have found some amazing resources on the internet from different school districts and community colleges that have handbooks and so on about incorporating accommodations. So I'm really excited to do that next week and to be involved in that moving forward. I think it'll be really fun and hopefully helpful. And there's a new collaboration happening. Livingstone Sterling reached out to Special Services. So Workforce Development is going to be working with Voc Rehab, and then me on the Special Services Department, and Jody Bossio-Smith, who works for the Maine Department of Education in the alternate assessment, are going to be working as a group to do some collaborating moving forward. And we're really not sure what the details are about that yet, but we're very excited to see the 1% population represented more in transition services and what that looks like in this type of a situation. So Jody and I are really excited to be a part of that and to see how that works out. And we're very happy that we were asked to be involved. And that is what I have. Are there any questions? No? I did put Aaron and David and my email here. If you have questions, you're welcome to contact us. And I will stop share. Okay. So Nancy, am I making you host again? I would assume. I'm going to do that. Here we go.
Yes, you should do that, Leora.
All right. Nancy, you should be the host again.
So as Leora is doing that, I just want you to, I just want to say, as you can tell, we do have a lot going on for transition, and we are often thinking transition first, because that's our love and our thoughts about post-secondary outcomes. And I just, Leora has really picked up the ball and carried it forward for our state, and working with all the stakeholders and collaborators that are currently involved in this work. And it just is exciting to see the work go forward. And we continue our what do I want to say, connection with NTACT. And we did a virtual conference. We'll do probably a virtual fall check-in conference, and hopefully maybe do it in person in the spring, but who knows, we probably do it in the spring virtually as well. But we are maintain that relationship with NTACT because they are our current researchers on all things transition. So they're our best go-to people, and we meet a lot of people in a lot of states doing this much the same work, and we either ask them questions or they ask us questions, because we're moving things forward in a much faster pace than we ever have before. So are there any questions, Janet or Kathy?
Oh, I think it's just a really exciting time to be touching base with you all. You're definitely advocating for transition services within our state and working on having different agencies work together. And to me, that's what it's all about. So it's exciting that you're behind this.
I think this was a great presentation to start our year with. It's just so timely with the start of the school year.
Thank you, thank you. And we encourage you contacting us if you hear of any need for transition, or you need find out something new that the state would be good for the state to know this to help with their collaboration or anything like that. Again, Leora gave our contact information in the PowerPoint, so feel free to reach out and share anything with us that we also would benefit from. A couple of weeks ago, Leora and Colette and Anne-Marie presented to the Autism Society, and they did talk about transition to them. So we're always trying to find stakeholders, collaborators, other people that would benefit from our knowledge of transition, and we would benefit from their activities as it relates to transition.
Well, it looks like we have a question in the chat. It says, where can we find the document regarding skills to work on at home?
So that would be part of the PDF that we shared yesterday with Kathy.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
I do have that.
Oh, perfect. Good, good, good.
Yeah.
We post, hi, this is Kathy. Nancy, is your plan, and Anne Marie's on the call too, do we all the PowerPoint and the handouts, do we post that for everybody to access on the what, Anne Marie?
I think we put it on the website.
On the website?
It'll be on the website
Yeah.
and probably a link on Facebook to the website. If I can figure out how to get them on Facebook, I will, but they'll definitely be on the website.
Good to see you, Anne Marie.
Nice to be seen.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So if there's nothing else, I think my team and us will, David, and I think Erin lost power in the part of the presentation. She apologizes. We'll skip out and let you finish the rest of your meeting. It was, again, nice to see all of you. Sorry you can't be face-to-face, but it really was a great opportunity to get together again to start your year off. Again, reach out to us anytime.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. It was great.
Thanks for your
Thank you.
All right. I just think that was so timely. Such a great thing to start with.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good.
Nancy, I'm feeling like you should have a facilitator, someone else facilitate the meeting for you while you lead it. But we can talk about that later.
That's you.
No, not necessarily, but you got a lot on your plate to manage this virtually.
Yes.
I think that's where independents like Jen and I can be helpful too. Like if we, in most meetings, you would assign the chair, the minute person, so
Okay.
however we can be helpful. Nancy truly put us to work. It's totally fine.
Okay, that's great to know. Yeah.
You might want to stop recording at this
Oh,
point.
yes, of course. Thank you. I like all this help I'm getting.